Bobbi Rebell, welcome back to the Dreamers podcast.
Thank you so much for having me back.
So for listeners who might not be familiar with you, can you share a little bit about you and what you do?
So I am a former business news TV anchor and personal finance columnist, and I wrote my first book in 2016, after which I left my job, which was my last corporate job was at Thomson Reuters as a global business anchor, as I mentioned. And I also became a certified financial planner. And now I have come up with my second book. This is my book. It's called Launching Financial Grownups, Live Your Richest Life by Helping Your Almost Adult Kids Become Everyday Money Smart.
So what made you write the book?
This book was inspired by my own almost adult kids, because even though I have so many years of journalism and writing and learning about money and money as it relates to real life, because when you do become a certified financial planner, you are learning about the practical aspects of money management. It's a very tangible license. And I still was struggling with my then college age kids. One is graduating college and one is out 3 years already. And I was just lost. And there are so many books for parents of younger children, maybe up through middle school. But when you get to the ages when they really need these real life money skills, like at age 16, many kids are getting their driver's licenses, even up to age 26, which is when they finally get bumped off their health insurance as parents that we can do thanks to the Affordable Care Act. That's the time when they really need that actual hands-on money help. And I was really having trouble getting my almost adult kids to pay attention. So I figured other people were as well. What I did have is an amazing network of experts that I was able to tap into and ask them for advice. And you, by the way, were one of those experts. So thank you very much for your help in the book. And I love the way that it came out. I think that everybody really delivered with inspirational and actionable advice. And I'm excited that people are now getting to read it.
I think it's a very different angle, right? Because even me, I have young children, so I always talk about raising financially savvy kids. But it's good to know that I'll have a tool that will help me when my kids are older so that they can become financial grownups. So as you were talking to different expert, parenting expert, financial expert, are there any things that surprised you that you learned? I'm sure you learned a lot in the process, but anything that jumps out?
I was surprised at how helicopter parenting has been evolving over the years, because I'm a Gen Xer, and helicopter parenting, of course, is not unique to Gen Xers, but it's generally most prominent in our generation, as small as we may be. And I was surprised at how it became snowplow parenting as our kids entered college, and we would sort of try to make their life easier. And you had parents calling up professors and asking for things and advocating for their children directly instead of letting the children advocate for themselves. And now, as they move out of the college years into sort of grown-up life, we are in many ways undermining them by making life a little bit too easy on the things that they can do themselves. And that's very different. I want to be clear about, different from just being there for them. We should be there for them. And we can help them financially in a strategic way that makes sense. But we have to separate that from doing things that they could do themselves, so that they gain the confidence to know that they're good to go, that they are grownups and we believe in them and they can do it. And they don't always need us. Be there for them in the clutch situations. There are times, absolutely, when parents should step in, but let go when you don't have to step in.
So in your book, you talk about the grown-up mindset. And so how do we draw the line between stepping up for our kids when they need us and providing ongoing financial support to them?
That is such a great question. So thank you for asking that. And it's really at the heart of this. What I think, and I'm curious to hear what you think, because as I said, you're also very much in the book and your voice is very present. It's a lot about setting expectations and building their confidence in their own ability. Let them know that you expect them, if they're not able to do something at this time, that within a certain time range, they should be able to do that. And you believe in them and they can do that. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be doing that. And while you're there for them in a time of crisis on an everyday basis, it's their turn to shine. It's their turn to live their life, not be always under your umbrella and living the life that you maybe thought they should live. We have to let them be free, but we also have to let them be accountable for the choices that they are making and not always be there to rescue them. I mean, be there, it's a judgment call, is what I'm saying. Rescue them. They're your kids. That's why I tell people it's not realistic to just cut them off. I'm not saying that, but you have to also take a step back and maybe let them fail in a controlled way, or fail in a way that may have real consequences, but not huge consequences, not consequences that won't be able to be overcome.
That makes perfect sense. I think sometimes as parents, we just naturally struggle with that, right? It's easier to just want to fix it than to let them fix it for themselves. So I'm wondering, so do you think that's something that you start when they're younger, or is it something that you can pick up when they're older? Because I'm under the belief that the sooner you start letting them figure things out and just be there to help them, the easier it's going to be for you to let go in the future. But I know it's an ongoing struggle.
I 100% agree with you. The reason that this book starts at age 16 and goes to age 26-ish, again, I say ish on both ends because everybody's kid is different, is because number one, I think the needs are very different in that age range versus the elementary school to middle school years. And also, frankly, including your book, there are other books out there. And this is where I really saw a need. So I don't think any one book can cover everything up to age 26. That would be ridiculous. Even this is a stretch. 16 to 26 was an ambitious age range. And I thought about making it for a smaller age range, but this is what I thought was sort of the most comprehensive because kids do evolve at different rates. And so I wanted to have more wiggle room in there. But I agree with you. The sooner the better to start these kind of thinkings and the mindset here. It's just that on a practical level, it was too much to write a book for everything. And there also,
Absolutely.
as I said, there's amazing books already out there. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Great people like yourself have done that already. This is where I saw a real need for myself too, by the way.
So, what are some of the money lessons that parents should teach their kids before they graduate high school so that they can be ready to be out there and be a financial grown up?
That is an excellent question. Well, I think the first thing is as they're moving into college, they should be thoughtful about the kind of career that they want. College, especially if you're going to college or even if you're going to trade school, be thoughtful about the cost of college relative to the job you're going to have out of college and make sure that there is some sort of a lineup that makes sense for the kind of lifestyle that you want to live. Go over with your child realistically what their life financially will look like. What is their overhead going to be when they get out? What does it cost? A lot of kids don't really have a tangible idea how expensive life is and the range of choices because we grow up living at our parents' lifestyle level. By the time they're going to college, usually we're more established in our careers. Maybe they're at a 3 out of 10, with one
Mm.
being the highest. When your kids come out, they might be at a 9 out of 10 because they're not going to have the financial resources that their parents had. So we have to sort of let them understand that they're not going to move into a house that looks like the house they grew up in, probably, or they won't have the same financial resources. So just understand they might have roommates. They might live at home for a while. They might live in a really, really small place or maybe not in their ideal neighborhood. And to understand that that's okay. And that doesn't mean they're failing or doing anything wrong. That means they're doing a good job. They're living their life, not their parents' life. And make sure that they understand how to budget. Basically, the basics of budget. It doesn't have to be super detailed. I love using technology. I think there's many great technology apps for budgeting, for just banking in general, for paying down debt. That's obviously something really important to cover with them, that when you get a credit card, you have to pay it off in full every month. And paying off does not mean the minimum payment. Teach them what a credit score is. Teach them to see their bills. Even if you're paying for college, my now 22-year-old that's graduating, what I have him do is he sets up the bursar's account. He sets up the payment plans, and then we do pay for it, but he has to tell us to pay it
Mm.
because I want him to be aware that the bills are being paid. So start including them in the relevant things to them with respect to money, because they might not realize how expensive they are.
You know,
And that will really help.
you made such great points. And when you mentioned your kids being comfortable with the fact that more than likely they won't be able to live in a similar environment as they grew up in when they start their career. And that made me think of an acquaintance of mine. She grew up in a very luxurious part of Paris in like a really nice apartment. And then she got married. And an issue presented itself, I think probably created by her parents, but they decided that she shouldn't move in a smaller apartment with a husband, and they should move into the apartment that she grew up in.
Yeah, you have to live your life. You as parents have to let your kids live their life at the financial level that makes sense for where they are in their life stages. And that's a really hard thing for parents because you want your kids to be sort of living the way that they grew up. And that's not always the right fit at
Mm.
that time in life. And it does get very complicated. You might have a parent, you say, oh, where should I go for dinner? The parents will suggest a very expensive restaurant
Mhm.
and they're not really thinking about it. That's just a restaurant that they like. And that is
Yeah.
not in your budget. Or they might say, oh, what are you wearing? And they don't like the outfit you're wearing. Well, you don't have an infinite clothing budget. Let your kid live within their means. If you're going out to dinner with them, you can pay for dinner. It's not to say you can't buy your kid an outfit once in a while, but in general, you have to let them be where they are in their life. And remember that you probably were too.
Mm.
I remember growing up, my parents stretched to buy a new house. And I remember the mantra used to be that you stretch to buy a house and then you grow into it and you just don't worry about furniture or anything. Just take it as is and you'll eventually get there. Now I think we're a little smarter. We say buy under what you can spend so you're not feeling stretched. But anyway, at the time, this is what they did in the 70s. They had interest rates of 18%. It was bananas back then. Hopefully that will never happen again. So every time we're upset about what's going on with inflation now, put that in perspective. But my mom, I remember she put towels up on the windows because they didn't have any money
Mm,
left to buy proper curtains yet.
mm.
And they had all old furniture at first, but then gradually they were able to build up. So it takes time. And that's something that we have to remember as parents, that we didn't instantly wake up to where we are now as parents of children that are whatever age. We worked up to that. We need to let them have the satisfaction of working up to that and not make them feel bad if they're not doing what we are doing. If we take
Mm.
a trip of a lifetime, they need to understand that's a trip of a lifetime after raising kids for 20 years, and that they don't need to travel at the same level. We traveled around. I remember, I mean, they were basically hostels. They give you a pile of sheets to make your bunk bed in a giant room of bunk beds. I don't think they were hotels. I think they were more like
Yeah,
hostels.
yeah.
I think they were hostels. That's what we stayed in. And my father was a pretty successful Wall Street person. So they could have paid for us to stay at reasonable hotels, but they just didn't. I don't know. That's where we stayed. So yeah, I remember 5 flights of stairs in Amsterdam. But look, I was in Amsterdam. How cool was that? I didn't
So,
really think about it at the time. That's just what we did.
so as you were writing this book, is there anything that you had to stop doing, either during the process or in recent years, to help your kids be financially independent from you?
First of all, this still keeps happening, both on the financial side and also just helicopter parenting in general. I mean, that's ultimately what this book is about. It's helicopter parenting that has evolved into snowplow and into concierge parenting, which is basically when you add money to the mix, because a concierge is sort of available at all times, can creatively solve almost any problem for you. And usually money ends up being part of what solves the problem, right? And so that's a lot of what this book is. And it's really hard not to do that. I mean, I'll tell you, a couple weeks ago, we had to renew my stepson's passport, and he's 22, but we just thought of him as our child. And so my husband and I went to the post office, and we were informed. This was a surprise to us, that even though he's our child, because he's 22, he's an adult and he needed to come on his own. I mean, think about that. How bad are we? And I've already written the book. Okay. That's how bad it is. When I say I'm right there with the parents, I am right there with the parents for sure, because I'm doing this. And I wrote this very much as a journalist looking to experts. And I need this book. I need to go back and read it and remember that these kids are not children. So we told the 22-year-old that he had to get his own passport. And you might think, oh, he's going to say, no, you guys do. He just said, oh, okay. And he made an appointment. That was it. Okay.
So sometimes we
He
just
had no problem. We have the problem.
yeah, sometimes we just don't give them enough credit.
Exactly. Well, we just need to step away from, even though we're still their parents, they are not children. They are adults and they can do things for themselves. And we shouldn't undermine that. And we should not assume that they can't.
Mm.
And if they really can't, then we need to be parents and get them to a point where they can.
In recent years, there's been a trend of kids moving back home after college. Can you share your take on this? Because I know this is something that has helped you and also helped your
Mhm.
stepdaughter get ahead
Yes.
financially.
I think this is a great trend in that it's taking away a lot of the feelings of shame and sort of slacker. Because when I moved home after graduation and I did buy an apartment, and I talk about it in detail in the book, my father did absolutely help me. In fact, he helped me a lot more than we helped my stepdaughter. But coming home, especially if your parents have the ability to let you live rent free, that's not always the case, where you can either just knock out your student debt in a year or two, just put 95% of your money. That's it. You're living for free.
Mm.
Put everything just loaded against that student debt, or pack it all into a savings account if you want to buy your own apartment, which is what Ashley did. That is such a great gift for parents to give to their children. It is an adjustment because they're your children, but they are adults. They are not children. And so you have to find a new way to relate. And that can be as simple as, if you really want all their money literally to go to whatever the goal is, fine. But that doesn't mean they can't have very specific cleaning duties, very specific duties towards meal planning, towards other ways that they can contribute to the household, maybe taking care of younger siblings and so on. There are ways that they can step it up. I also, and this has been controversial in doing these interviews, I also believe that if you are fully supporting your adult children for financial reasons towards their financial goal, not a bad reason, I want to emphasize these are kids moving home for good reasons. You do have every right to look at their money. So I could see when she was home how much was going into savings, because I didn't want her to slack off. I wanted to protect her. And I wanted to make sure the money was going where she intended it to go. And because you can get a dribble, go out with your friends one night, eat with your coworkers another day, it gets tricky. And one thing in the book that I'm going to let people read in the book, the details of, I really objected to her decision to, during the pandemic, she bought season passes to, she and her boyfriend, to Disney World in Florida. Now we live in New York City. It's a pandemic. Okay. I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, well, it's dirt cheap. That's the only vacation I'm going to have. I've got my vaccine. I've got my masks and we're going. And she wrote an epilogue at the end of this book that everyone should read, and they can read her case. You can tell I'm still a little bit miffed because I don't like it, but this goes to the point where you have to let them live their life and you can't really stop them. You can control your own things. I could have said to her, well, if you're going to make those decisions, let's reevaluate you living at home for free. But at the end of the day, she was 24. She's going to do what she wants to do. She's earning her own money. So you have to respect the fact that your children may make financial decisions that you don't agree with, but they do make sense to them. She fully justifies it in this epilogue that everyone's got to read. And I don't know. It's interesting to hear what different people think.
Well,
Most people tend to take her side. I don't know.
She definitely made some good points. It looks like it was a well thought out decision and it worked out. So
I know. I still was not happy, but she got her voice in there and people love the epilogue. It's really funny. It's great.
I really love some of the advice that she shared for
Mhm.
other young financial grown-ups or financial grown-ups to be. It's just amazing that she's already just maxing out on points and planning her vacations around that. So yeah, everyone should definitely read it.
What's interesting though, she writes about this, that when she moved into college and my husband, I stayed back for that. We sort of tag team different events when she was starting college. So my husband was the one there that actually moved her in, and they went to one store, like, I don't know, it's Bed Bath & Beyond or Target, and they just got everything. They weren't obsessing about prices. They just bought what she needed and loaded up her dorm room. When she was moving into her apartment that she bought, which people can read about, she made spreadsheets. She loves Excel. She made spreadsheets of where the best prices were for each item. And she talks about how much money she saves. I forget the number. You can read it in the epilogue, but she saved a lot of money because when it was her own money, she took the time to really price out everything. And that's something we really should take note of.
So for any of the dreamers that are listening that either have young kids that are going to be teenagers soon or already have teenagers and they want to help them become financial grown-ups, what are the top 3 things that they have to do or look into before their kids go off to college, or if they decide to go to college or do something else?
I think the most important thing is to make sure you're having a continuous dialogue with your child. And I really stress dialogue, not monologue.
Mm,
People often say, well, what would be a script for that? I say a script would have a lot of blank space for listening,
mm.
because often we are so busy projecting our hopes and dreams on them that we don't listen to what they say and what they want. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to try to steer them to something different, but we have to listen, because if they don't feel heard, they're not going to hear us.
Mm.
I think it's also important to give them the basics of understanding living within your means, understanding what things cost relative to how much you can earn, and having that work ethic. And then the third thing I would say is to just stay out of debt. Debt is the killer. And that if you are out of debt, you're always going to be able to manage financially. It's debt that is the one thing that really can create a cloud. And I say that with a caveat that at the same time, we're trying to teach our kids to use credit in a responsible way, because the reality of our society right now is that they do, in my opinion, and people do disagree with this, but I feel that they do need to start building a credit score
Yeah.
and a credit report. And some people disagree. They say, well, you should just never borrow money. That's fine for them. But I do feel realistically, many of our children will want to borrow money, whether it's for a house or a car. And having the best credit rating they can have is so important. So teaching them the basics of debt management and how to build credit. And that might involve you helping them being on your credit card with limitations. There are guardrails when you put a kid on a credit card so that they can have some real world experience and they can benefit from your credit history as well.
It's an interesting point, the credit thing, because even if you don't end up needing it, it doesn't hurt to have a good credit score. It's just more options.
Sometimes job employers check it too, by the way.
That's true. I actually know someone who ended up finding out she had a terrible credit score when she didn't get the job. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why awareness is really important early on. And that's something that Ashley was working on while she was saving. She was very aware of building her credit score. And, she was aware when she started having a regular income at her post-college job, that really helped her credit score. So she was watching those things. She was aware of what a hard inquiry was versus a soft inquiry. And understanding that is important. Again, maybe they'll never use it, but you don't know when someone else is going to use it. So you want to be aware of what it is. And that's just, it kind of stinks in a way that we live in a society where you're judged by this number, but it's not something you can change quickly. So that's why I put it at the top, because you could pay off debt quickly sometimes if you got money for some reason, but you can't fix a credit score instantly. It takes time. So that's really important.
So, Bobbi, I always end the interview with a round of rapid fire questions. Tell me about a book that changed your perspective on life.
I think yours did. I think seeing different cultural perspectives was very enlightening and gave me different insights that I hadn't really thought about before. It really did. And it inspired me. And I'm glad you were able to participate in my book and share really some of the same insights in the book. I think different cultures and their attitudes towards money is a very not only interesting thing for us to talk about, but also it's a very important thing because it gives us an understanding towards different behaviors of different cultures, religions, ethnic groups, backgrounds.
So what's one thing about money you wish you could tell your younger self?
Oh gosh, so many things. But you know what I would say to my younger self and to me? Don't get so stressed out about it all the time. I am constantly worrying, even though it's not a rational worry. In fact, my sister has dubbed it irrational frugality. And I think a lot of people do that. I sometimes have missed out on some life experiences because of irrational frugality. I have a lot of regrets of things I didn't spend money on. I wished I had done more traveling and things, but I was so busy getting a job and I wish I'd been a little less tight with my money.
So what's the best investment in yourself you've made so far?
I think starting my business post my corporate job, I think that's been really great for me. It's worked out financially in that my goal was to always earn more than I did in my corporate job. And so far, that's always been true. The pandemic was hard. So now I'm trying to get back on track now that things are opening up and the speaking business hopefully will revive a little bit more. But I think it's really important to bet on yourself. And I just want to warn people that if you want to go out on your own and you have responsibilities like children and a household, especially, be mindful about how you do it.
Filling the blank in 3 words or less. Money to me is
security, freedom, and family.
What do you want your legacy to be?
For people to feel more secure about money and more confident about money, especially have confidence in their children to leave it. And really, as we've talked about, to have generational wealth, which statistically is incredibly hard to do, no matter what culture you're in. I think the statistic is 70% does not succeed in passing really to the second generation and 90% to the third generation. That makes me sad. So
Absolutely.
I hope that I can make a dent in that at least.
Bobbi, tell the dreamers where they can find you, where they can get your book.
Sure. So you can find pretty much everything at my website, which is just bobbirebell.com, my name. To find my podcast is called Money Tips for Financial Grownups, and you've been on it. So thank you very much. And I have a lot of fun adulting merchandise at grownupgear.com. Oh, and I started TikTok. You'd be so proud of me. I have parenting tips on TikTok. So I just started TikTok a couple weeks ago. It's really cringy. So I need all your support. It'll definitely make you laugh, but it's just my name, Bobbi Rebell. And so please follow me on TikTok and do all the things. I don't really understand TikTok yet, but do the things that you're supposed to do on TikTok. I guess you're supposed to like it and watch it all the way. Watch the videos all the way through. So thank you for your TikTok support. That's what I really need.
All right.
That's where the world is going, right? Are you on TikTok?
I've been fighting it. I'm not there.
Oh, no. I know. Me too.
It might change, but I'm still like not on there.
I know.
But yeah, thank you, Bobbi.
Thank you so much for having me.